Have you ever noticed that your life seems to move in cycles? Something begins, something grows, something falls apart, something disappears, and then, somehow, something new emerges again. A relationship starts and later changes. A version of you appears and then dissolves. Motivation comes and goes. And most of us experience these movements as random, as if life is happening to us instead of through us. But what if there were actually deeper patterns underneath it all? What if consciousness itself moves in recognizable ways, and understanding those movements could completely change the way you relate to your life? David, William, Pierce, welcome back. And one of the reasons I became so deeply connected to tantric teachings is because they began to give me language to things I could already feel happening inside of myself, but hadn't actually articulated yet. They helped me recognize that my inner world wasn't random, that there was a structure underneath experience, intelligence underneath change. And my intention with these transmissions is to simply pass that understanding on, so that maybe you feel a little more supported, seen, and less alone in your own experience of being human. This week's teaching is on what Tantra calls the 5 acts of God. This is from Christopher Harish Wallace's Tantra Illuminated book. Highly recommend. These 5 acts are not what God is, but rather what God does. In non-dual Shaiva Tantra, these 5 acts are understood as the core movements of consciousness itself. And they are creation, maintenance, dissolution, concealment, and revelation. And according to Tantra, these aren't just cosmic events happening somewhere out there. They're happening continuously inside your own life, in your own mind, relationships, in your experience moment to moment, from the macro all the way to the micro. Most people think spirituality is about escaping or transcending life somehow. This is the Patanjalic yoga in essence. But Tantra is radically different, or at least it was at the time. It says that life itself is the expression of consciousness, which means the movements of your life are not separate from the divine. The beginnings are sacred, the endings are sacred. Even the confusion and the forgetting are all part of the sacred dance. And understanding this can change something important, because most of our suffering comes from resisting one part of the movement whilst clinging to another. The first act is called Shuddhi, or creation, and more accurately, a mission, the flowing forth of consciousness into form. This is the movement of life expressing itself, an idea appearing, a desire emerging, a relationship beginning, creativity moving through you, something that previously existed only as potential suddenly beginning to take shape in manifest reality. And you've likely felt this before. Moments where inspiration arrives naturally, perhaps unexpectedly. Something within you wants to move, to create, to speak, love, build, or become. And Tantra says this movement is not separate from life. It is life, getting to express itself through you. And I feel that's beautiful. Okay, so the second act is sthiti, or maintenance, preservation. This is the sustaining of what has already been created. A relationship continuing over time. A body being cared for. A practice being repeated consistently. Or a business being maintained. And I think this is where many people can struggle. Creation feels exciting most of the time. whereas maintenance often requires devotion. It's easy to begin something when inspiration is high and there's excitement driving it, but it's much harder to consciously sustain something once the novelty fades. But Tantra says maintenance is sacred too. Not just the breakthrough moment, but the discipline, the consistency, the continued choice to participate in life. And then comes samhara, or dissolution, the third of the 5 powers. Not destruction in the violent sense, but reabsorption. The drawing back of form into potential again. The ending of a chapter. The collapse of an identity, a relationship changing form, or an old pattern falling away. And most people resist this movement very deeply. We cling, we grasp, we try to preserve versions of ourselves, of our lives, of our relationships that consciousness itself may already be dissolving. But Tantra says dissolution is not failure. It is the part of intelligence, of life, that is natural. Without dissolution, nothing new could ever emerge. And sometimes the suffering is not actually the ending itself. It's our resistance to that ending, our refusal to let consciousness move naturally. We want to hold on. We want permanence in a reality built upon movement, which is why we suffer. It's folly. And because of that, we often experience dissolution as a sense of punishment rather than an opportunity for transformation. But maybe the thing dissolving in your life right now is not being destroyed. Maybe it's simply being returned to possibility, to openness, to something else, so that something different, more aligned to who you're becoming, can emerge. And if you're recognizing yourself in this, especially as a man navigating transition or relationship change or challenge, perhaps loss of direction or an identity shift, feeling that an old version of yourself is dissolving, this is exactly the work that we can do in Men's Transformation of Yoga. Help me navigate major life or relationship transitions to rebuild self-trust, clarity, and grounded direction, so you can go from knowing better to actually doing better, living life at your authentic edge, being able to show up in truth and in power. Because often the issue is not that something is wrong with you, it's that life is trying to evolve you beyond a version of yourself that you're still clinging to. So if something in this speaks to you, even subtly, there's more information in the description. Follow the link. Okay, returning to the teachings. The 4th act is tirodhana, concealment, forgetting, the veiling of our true nature. And this one is profound because Tantra says consciousness deliberately forgets itself in order to experience individuality, in order to experience limitation and separation, the entire play of this human experience. Which means the moments where you feel lost or disconnected, afraid or ashamed, are not evidence that you failed spiritually. Forgetting is simply part of the movement too. You forget your wholeness, your connection to life. You identify with fear, comparison, inadequacy, and the conditioned self, and suddenly you experience life through contraction instead of openness. But then, luckily, there comes the 5th act, anugraha, grace, revelation, remembering, The moment consciousness recognizes itself again. The moment the veil thins and something becomes clear. You've likely experienced these moments too. In fact, you definitely have, because these are all just what is ever happening, these 5 acts, in various shapes and forms. A conversation can completely change something. A teaching can land deeply. A breath can open your awareness. And a pattern can suddenly become visible. You feel connected again, alive again, present again. Not because you became something new, but because something already true was recognized and revealed. And this changes the entire spiritual path, or at least it can, because the goal is not to become divine. No, Tantra says your deepest nature already is consciousness itself. The path is about recognizing the movements of life more clearly, seeing where something is being created, where it's being sustained, where it's dissolving, where you've forgotten yourself, and where grace is trying to reveal something again to you. These 5 acts are not abstract philosophy. Tantra says they are happening in your life right now, in your relationship, your habits, your identity, your nervous system, your ambitions and fears. And when you begin recognizing them, something shifts, softens. You stop fighting life quite so blindly and begin participating more consciously instead. Creation is sacred. Maintenance is sacred. Dissolution is sacred. Forgetting is part of the path, and remembering is grace. So maybe nothing has gone wrong. Maybe life is simply moving, and that's okay. Because maybe the thing ending is making space for something new, even if it's not fully taken shape for you yet. Maybe the confusion is simply concealment, and the clarity returning is just grace itself. Because when you begin understanding these movements and beginning to recognize them where they show up in your life, you stop needing life to remain fixed in order to feel safe. You begin trusting the intelligence underneath change itself. The 5 acts are not happening somewhere else. They're happening through you, for you, in your becoming, your relationships, in your suffering, and in your growth. So if you'd like to go deeper into this week's teaching, there is a full quiz linked in the description to support you in integrating what we've explored in this video. And if you'd like the answers, you can receive them for free. Simply follow the link in the description and they'll be sent to you. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next transmission. Cheers.